Welcome back to the Family Section Podcast. Tony Maz with Greg Bottenhorn, Chief Marketing Officer of Jassby. So we want to get to something a little different today, not just, all about kids per se. The name of this episode is Side Hustle. And you'll understand some of the wordplay there a little bit later. But as usual, I'm going to let Greg kick us off here. And Greg, why don't you tell people what's on your mind this week?
Yeah, sure. So side hustles is one of those things it's always been intriguing to me, right? And we see these people that make, honestly, in some cases, a lot of money on the side. And what's really interesting is how it's becoming full-time gigs and how that's impacting your family, your work-life balance, time with your kids. I'll tell you from I've been an executive for a long time, and I've changed jobs at least once because the amount of time I was putting into that job just took too much time away from my kids, right? So it's been tough. So the other part that I think is really fascinating here is we're in an interesting time in this country. They're calling it the big quit or the Great Resignation, depending on what you're hearing. But people are leaving their jobs right now in huge numbers. And a lot of it is because people are turning to the side work or working for themselves and honestly making huge amounts of money. So what's interesting, Tony, is that this isn't necessarily new. I can remember as a kid, my mom sold things like Tupperware and Jafra cosmetics and things like that. It's really just how it's evolved, right? So what about you? I'm thinking back to your youth. Did your parents do anything like this?
So no, my parents didn't, but look at, the old cliche is the Avon lady. The Avon lady ring the doorbell and there you go. And they used to remember they used to go door to door to sell vacuum cleaners and things like that. Right. And some people would do those as second jobs. What has changed it now, obviously, is the internet. So the internet has and sort of the mobile nature of the world in general has allowed for so many more opportunities on this kind of stuff. And even just like Uber, Lyft, like all these services. And I mean, there's all kinds of things that people can do on the side or whatever they choose full time if they want to make money.
Yeah. I mean, I guess even someone like you, right? I mean, it's obviously your full-time job is a radio host, but you write books and you do stuff like that. I guess it's a little bit bigger of a side type hustle, but it's, I do the same thing, right? So like I'm an executive, but I do a lot of investing. I have rental properties, things like that. I think they call it multiple streams of income, right? This is the way of the world today is not to put all your eggs in one basket, right? Financially.
Oh, totally. Look, so, my parents pushed me when I was young to buy a 2-family home. So I was 27 when I bought that house. And, the idea was I collect rental income off of one unit. I live in the other one. It helps pay the mortgage. And in my case, it basically paid my monthly mortgage. So I lived rent free. And at the same time, I built equity. So that was really good advice that they gave me. I've kept that. So yes, I'm a landlord. I always tried to use some of the skills I have outside of my regular job. So I was covering the Red Sox, years ago, and I would do freelance stories for magazines, small ones. Athlon Sports used to put out a baseball preview issue, or there was a Red Sox fan magazine. And then I started writing for the web a little bit for some places when the internet came along. And a lot of those fees for writers weren't great, but you add them all together and you do a story here and there, and now you're making a few extra bucks. A big one now is Cameo, Greg.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, for sure. It's a huge side gig for sure.
You can make it. I'm sorry, say that again.
No, I was just going to say, what's funny is you were talking through that. I was thinking, right? Because one of the things we're going to talk about later is obviously when it goes from a side hustle to kind of your full-time gig. One of the things that's interesting about you, Tony, is actually kind of radio stuff was almost a side hustle for you back when you were a writer, right?
That's correct. Yep. It was, it's exactly what it was. It was a side gig. It was a spin-off of the writing job. And I would go in and, I say guest host, but I would be a contributor to Glenn Ordway's show on WEEI. And then, they would use me for like a weekend baseball show that I did with Bob Newmeyer for a period of time. But the bottom line is yes. Yeah. And then that took me down this road. So as I got more and more comfortable and got more reps, it started to, I got a little more aggressive on the air over time.
And you kind of got it, right?
Yeah, well, right. But I mean, initially you tend to be conservative, right? And you have to learn the job too. So I was really fortunate in that the area in which I worked led to many other things that I was able to do on the side to make a few bucks.
Yeah.
But yes, radio was a side endeavor. Absolutely. And, it's turned into my career, obviously.
Yeah, I'd say it turned out pretty well for you.
Yeah, not too bad. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been lucky, Greg. We've
Yeah.
been lucky.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
work
yeah.
in- no, look,
Sure.
I don't want to give you with like this whole, everybody says, but we work in the best sports city in America, maybe in the world. And we've had really good teams here for a long, long time. And, and Felger and I happened to be born at a time where we stumbled into these little mini golden ages of individual teams. So, I covered the Red Sox at a time when I started covering them. They hadn't won in almost a century, and then they won 4 World Series, and ditto for the Felger with the Patriots. And if the teams don't win, you just don't have as big a following. That's just a simple fact.
That's a really good point. So one of the things that I think is interesting about this, though, is how these side gigs are impacting, what I'll call the normal jobs, right? But when I say that, I mean hospitality, retail, because a lot of the people that drive your Ubers or that become resellers or that do things like that are people that were in that industry and quite honestly find that, one, they like it a lot better because they don't have to deal with a lot of the same pain in the ass people. But two, they start making significantly more money. So I guess what's the impact of all these side gigs on some of these regular day-to-day type jobs and how, what are we going to do about that? Because I'll tell you, I'm sure you see it. You go to a restaurant or something like that today, forget about it. And stores are closing and restaurants are closing and the ones that are open can't find people. And so it's a not as pleasant of an experience. So I guess how do we fill that? Because that's concerning to me.
Well, look, it should be. I mean, again, COVID didn't help with a lot of that either, right? People sort of started to find different ways to make money without being around people as much, and so it's led to all kinds of problems. So there's this definite shift going on there. That's a question that's probably bigger than me. Like, I don't know if I can necessarily give you that answer.
You can't solve all the world's problems today, Tony.
No, I can. I can try to solve many of them, Greg. But that one to me is a little bigger than my scope.
Maybe it's above our pay grade. Is that what you're saying?
No, it might be worth bringing in some sort of expert.
It's not a bad idea. We maybe should, Steph, make note of that. Let's talk to an expert about how we fix hospitality in a future episode.
But listen, I think what you're saying is right. It is, there's this whole shift going on now of how it's going to affect the real world. And I mean, or the world we're accustomed to. It's probably a better way of saying it. But like, I don't know, if you're a restaurant and you're having trouble getting servers, I think one way to do it is to increase your wages. So
sure, but that increases everything else, right? So now you as the customer, your bill's higher, and now you're upset about that. And we already know they're paying more money for food and costs, like we all are right now, right? So at some point, it kind of defeats the purpose of going out if you're a consumer. So I don't know. It's all to your point. It's probably a bigger question that we're going to answer here in 20 minutes, but. I don't know. It's like when I think of side hustles, I think of the impact that it has on other things. But I'll tell you what, speaking, I mentioned retail, and in terms of side hustles, one of the bigger ones are people that are reselling things, right? So I don't know about you, Tony. I've got so many connections and friends that have figured this out. And I can tell you, I've tried. I'm a little bit of a hoarder, though. So I buy something and I think it's cool and I want to keep it. Maybe hoarder is the wrong word. I'm a collector. I think that's the nicer way to say it, right?
Yeah.
But so many people are figuring this reselling market out, and you have so many sites now. Your eBay and Amazon are obviously your biggest ones, but there's Wish, and there's this whole line. Etsy is a big one, right? There's this whole line of places where you can go and buy cool stuff. And the people that are on the other end that are selling you that stuff for significantly more than they may have gotten it for, that are really cleaning up on this. There's tons of money going around out there.
Yes. So, which is why this is a good time to tell you that next on the podcast, we'll be speaking with our first guest on the Family Section podcast, and that is Richie Hustles. So we'll give you Richie's story and how it relates to this particular topic. And just a quick reminder, don't go anywhere. We'll have Richie here in just a second. But you can find the Family Section podcast on the podcast page of 985thesportshub.com, as well as the app Also, you can find it at jassby.com, and that's jassby.com/podcast, as well as the usual places, BPod Studios. B stands for Beasley, bpodstudios.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll have Richie Hustles, who has built himself quite a career as a retailer, basically, self-employed retailer. Is that a fair assessment, Greg?
I think that sounds pretty good. Reseller.
Okay, so reseller. So Richie Hustles joins us next on the family section.
Welcome back to the family section. So as Maz told you, joining us is going to be a guest that can talk about this side hustle, side gig world, and it's Richie Hustles. So to tell you a little bit about Richie, he actually was a bank executive for a number of years, like 10 plus 15 years, something crazy like that. Got a couple of kids, started this part of selling these things on the side, and decided that he can make probably a ton more money doing that and have a lot more time with his kids. So that's what we want to talk about. Welcome, Richie.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me. What's going on, Greg? Tony, how are you?
I'm very good. Yeah. So I'm eager to know. Tell us your general story here as to how you get started in this and what exactly you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I was in the banking industry for a number of years, 11 years to be exact. And I guess it kind of started with, I loved my job at the time, but as it was kind of coming towards 2021, I really didn't like my boss. That's really kind of was the general consensus of why I kind of was looking elsewhere. Started looking up videos on, how I could make either side money or start a business, or kind of brainstorming. And because I had such a long commute to work, it was 2 hours to work and then 2 hours back home. It was a 4-hour round trip in Boston. I lived in Bellingham, Mass. So driving to the train, taking the train in, yada, yada, yada. I started looking at YouTube videos, got some ideas, ran into a couple of other resellers on YouTube, and then decided to take $8 of my money and go to a library because I was looking at resellers that were selling books. Went next door to the library with $8, turned it into like $50 selling used books, and then took that $50, snowballed it, and then the rest was kind of history. Got into retail arbitrage, which was going into Walmart and Targets and buying clearance items. So we kind of just worked up over the last 4 years.
$8, Tony.
The rest is history. $8.
It's amazing. It's like the dream, right?
So Richie, you get your product by going into stores, buying discount items, and then reselling them online for obviously higher values.
Correct. Now I go into Walmart, Target, Marshalls, TJ Maxx. I buy the clearance items, or even sometimes full price items if they're selling for a premium on Amazon. It's all about supply and demand, and then I resell them for profit on Amazon. And that's a part of my business. The other part, I do dabble in a little bit of wholesale. So I do have accounts with distributors that will allow me to get what we call replenishables, which is, I guess, kind of like a form of reselling, right? Distributors and you sell. That's about 30% of my business. And then there are other streams of income that I also have as well on top of that.
I think what you're saying is that there's a kind of a natural progression here, right? So you started with $8 selling used books, and then as you progress and you get bigger and it becomes more of a thing for you, now you can get into those distributor wholesale type relationships. It just leads you to other stuff.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So Richie, what are your hours like now? I mean, do you find that you're working less, you're working more, but you can control your own schedule? What is that like?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. I mean, I definitely, owning a business, running a business, multiple businesses, I'm definitely working, I think, more. I think I'm at the point now where I need to start learning how to delegate and hire certain tasks. For instance, like when I have my YouTube channel, when I'm out there recording myself, maybe I should have somebody edit my videos to give myself that time back. In general, I can wake up when I want. I can go to bed when I want. I can see my kids when I want. I can go to trips. I can do whatever I want when I want, right? Because whatever I put into the business is going to come out of the business. So it's kind of like up and down. It's not as structured, I guess, as waking up at 5:30, making sure I'm at work at 8:30. I leave at 5:30. I'm home by 7, and it's just like this vicious cycle. It's definitely a lot more loose, but a lot of times I do find myself working 12. I didn't get to bed last night till 2 a.m. because I was trying to edit a couple of videos to get ahead of it because I knew I was going to have the shipments today. So I can get kind of busy at times.
Plus, I got to think you like your boss more these days.
Yes.
There's the hat, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and when you say the world, your job's less structured, the world is less structured, right? So, like,
Right. That's right.
we're all doing a lot of that stuff on the fly. So, look, now I'm going to ask you the question that you don't have to answer specifically, okay? But relative to what you were making as a banker and what you're making now, give us some. Is there some comparison you can make there so that people say, well, so people who are listening or watching don't say, well, yeah, he left the banking industry, but he's making, 10% of what he made in the banking industry. Like, so just give us some ideas to how it has worked out for you.
Yeah, so the way I kind of did it was when I was working at the banking industry, I had a second daughter on the way. I have 2 daughters, one's 2 and one's 6. At the time where I was thinking about quitting my job, my second daughter wasn't born yet, but I was starting to try to contemplate how can I make this work? And, what I decided was, my income, I was making a 6-figure salary at the bank. And, to leave the benefits and to leave that pay is kind of a big deal because it's not just me to worry about. My wife is a stay-at-home mom, so it's like I'm supporting myself, my wife, my 2 kids. And, I'm friends with a lot of other like real big-time resellers on Instagram. And I remember reaching out to one of them and he said to me, he asked me, he goes, how much do you make now? And I was asking him, when is a good time to quit my job? And he said to me, don't let, we'll just say, 100,000. He goes, don't let 100,000 prevent you from making 500,000. So, what I make now is definitely a lot greater to be able to support my family. And the way I decided the way I came to that conclusion was that my YouTube channel actually ended up skyrocketing at the beginning of 2021. So I didn't even have to quit based on my Amazon reseller numbers. I was able to quit because I was able to replace my salary with my YouTube revenue, which was super amazing. Being sent home in March of 2021 with everything going on, home really kind of allowed me to really scale up my business and give me a lot more time to do what I have to do at home. So, I ended up quitting my job based on my YouTube monthly revenue. And then Amazon is just the bonus. It's just, we're just funneling back into the business, taking small paychecks from Amazon. But YouTube really helped me really leave my job in August, actually. August 3rd.
Richie, what do you use your YouTube channel for?
So I use my YouTube channel to document everywhere I go. So when I go into Walmart, when I go into Target or any other stores, I film myself going into these stores and I film what I'm buying. I'll show people on the Amazon app, what it's selling for on Amazon, the fees that are taken out, and if what I'm left with is greater than what I'm buying it for, then that's the profit margin. So I'm trying to show people, hey, you can go into these stores, scan these products with the free Amazon app, and it's going to tell you all the information that you need to know. As far as like, if you're buying a $2 item and you're gonna make $10 after everything, obviously you're gonna make $8 profit. And I know it doesn't stop there because I know the shipping fees involved and all this other stuff. So maybe you make 6 instead of 8. There's a lot involved as far as like Amazon fees and shipping, and that's probably like a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll tell you. So I get the reseller part of it. I've always like the whole making money off of being a YouTube and one of these the social media influencers, right? It's crazy. How does that come together? Like, at what point are you like, holy shit, I can make money doing this?
I mean, to tell you the truth, first year and a half, I made over 200 videos and I got paid nothing because I was trying to get monetized on YouTube. And that was a struggle. And, making 2 or 3 videos a week and putting that extra time into editing and then putting it up. And then sometimes you get 100 views, sometimes 1,000 views. It's very emotional. But like, I think it was just being consistent. I started putting out videos every single day because I literally would just document every single place I went. I'd throw it up for the universe. And then I kind of started tweaking things and seeing what worked better, just went with it. I think it really comes down to the person behind the camera, personality, relatability. I feel like I can relate and not have people relate to me because, number one, I don't try to talk, all this, very professional and like, hey guys, well, I am who I am. It is what it is. I'm not here to teach anybody. I'm just here to document to show you that you could do it. You can do it too. And I think as just coming off as an average Joe who's figured out how to make this happen, I think a lot of people can relate to that. So they gravitate towards that.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you've built up a pretty serious social following along the way. Do you want to tell people where to find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube or any social media outlet at Richie Hustles. It's the same name on every outlet, on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.
What size audiences do you have there? Is it crazy? Are you
on Instagram? I don't know if I would consider I think honestly, I really don't like the term influencer, but I guess I do influence, right? If I'm having people go out and buy what I'm buying and they're able to make money off it, I guess that's influencing. I just hit 17,000 on Instagram. Instagram's a little tough with their algorithm to kind of like really grow, but on YouTube, I'm coming up to about 49,000 subscribers. And I've made about 6,000 subscribers just the past 2 weeks. So that kind of like really went up in a line for a little bit. So I love reaching people, and I meet people in Walmarts all the time. They come up to me on my live shows. I do lives on Sundays where I'm showing people in real time what I'm buying, and people come up to me and be like, "Hey, I know you," but it kind of feels awkward. It felt awkward at first because I'm like, dude, I'm just, you know what I mean? Listen, I'm just a kid from Boston that goes into these stores and I buy stuff. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, I know. But it's kind of cool, scary, cool at the same time.
It's the kick-ass name, Richie. You can't beat Richie Hustles.
Oh man, thank you.
Is that legit? Is that like your legit name?
No. So I used to DJ for 17 years in Boston, between Boston and I grew up in the North Shore. I grew up in Revere, Mass, and then we moved to Wakefield, Mass. So I've DJed along Route 1 when it was Vision Nightclub, and I've DJed at Venue and the Roxy. I was a resident there back in 2006 with, I don't know if you've ever heard of DJ Dilson, Rick Naples. These are old school DJs. I've DJed for 15 years in Boston. I used to go by Richie Play. So I always had this persona of like promoting myself and like kind of like putting myself out there for promotion. So I was thinking of, I said, I don't want to be like my regular name. Like if I'm going to like get out there and be this like personality and show people, like I got to come up with a name. So I was just like, I was like, I don't know, Richie Hustles. I guess you could use it as a name and a verb, right? Like Richie Hustles and Richie Hustles. I don't know.
It's awesome. It's a perfect name. So it sounds like you've been doing side hustles for a long time. You were the DJ, which I think is one of those early day kind of side hustles, and so you've always kind of been a side hustler. I'm not surprised that you ended up being very successful in that area. Yeah, you must know Richie Hustles from the club scene on Route 1 back in the day, right? See you hitting
back in Vision Nightclub.
Well, so I was going to say the key word there, though, is hustles. Like, this is not, to me, it's an important part to touch on. It's not like this is easy. I mean, you're working, Richie.
Correct. It is absolutely not easy. And just to put it to context, how not easy it can get and how emotional it can get. You can have your great days, your great weeks, and then all of a sudden you have zero sales and you can't figure out why. And you get into this zone. And, when I was working 9 to 5 doing that, the commuting back and forth, I was kind of nervous to take money out of my savings to inject more into Amazon. Because I'm like, what if I lose that? What if I mess up? What if? So I actually ended up driving Uber Eats and DoorDash. I have 2 phones to this day. I still keep 2 phones because I would literally put Uber Eats on one and I would put DoorDash on the other, and I would make about $1,500 extra a week. But that came with like severe for a year of my life. I feel like has been erased because I would leave for work before anybody was awake, and I would come home after 11 when everybody was sleeping. So for a year, like no birthday parties, nothing. Like we're talking like extreme sacrifice. But in the end, it was all worth it. And now I'm able to have the flexibility to do what I want, and I'm going to get out whatever I put in. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to even.
So Richie, I don't say this judgmentally. I ask this question seriously because I did you go to college, or did you? Because this sounds like a lot of people say you don't need college like you used to do. A lot of people who don't think it's necessary. The cost is prohibitive, and so maybe someone can do this straight out of high school.
Yeah, and they absolutely can, as long as they're dedicated and they stay committed, and as long as they stay consistent. And as far as college, I tried the college thing. I did not graduate from college. Right out of high school, my mother wanted me to go to college, and I couldn't get into some of the other colleges, so I ended up going to community college. It just wasn't for me. I stopped, and then I met 11 years ago. I tried doing night school, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna get that. It's just not for me. The whole studying, testing, and the book thing is just not for me. If there's opportunity to make, I mean, we got teenagers out here that are flipping A's for $500,000 that they bought for $800. You know what I mean? It's crazy how it's shifting.
It's Maz. I think we'll end up doing a whole show on that because it's so true. And the hard part is for years, we forced people to go to college and it just wasn't for them, and it's okay. And I think Richie's proving there are other options for you out there. If you have these God-given skills that you can turn into a living, that's just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I love it. Richie, I'm curious, what's some of the best advice you can give? Because obviously we have listeners here that are probably where you were starting out selling used books, right? What's some of the best advice you can give to these people who are just starting in this?
Yeah. So one of the number one things I get messaged about is, how can I do this? How can I start this? And I think the main thing is, I think people just need to start. And they need to use the free tools that are available to them. When somebody says to me, how do I set up an Amazon account, or how do I do this? I always tell them, I'm like, look, I can't hold your hand through everything. You have to understand that you have Google. So, type in google.com, type in Amazon seller account. It's going to come right up and you click it and you're going to be able to walk right through it. I would say, I would just really say, just pay attention, watch a bunch of videos that you find that you can resonate with, right? Don't watch stuff that you're scratching your head still, yeah, but I just don't understand. There are a ton of resellers out there now, even way more than, when I started 4 years ago. And there's a lot of free information out there. So just pay attention to that. And the important thing is to take action. Don't just sit there and say, all right, I'll start next week, or okay, I'll do this tomorrow or next week or next month or whatever. No, start now. There's no better time than now.
Even with $8 at a library, right?
Right. That's right.
Hey, what, Richie, that's an amazing story. So I'm going to make you this prompt. We're going to have you back at some point because
sure.
I have a million questions for you, and I'm sure Greg does still too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure people who are listening have a lot of questions, but we like to do them in sort of smaller chunks, just because they're how long's your average YouTube video?
20 to 30 minutes.
There you go. Exactly.
Right in your sweet spot, buddy.
Exactly. I mean, and that's where they should be. So before we let you go, two things. One, just tell everyone again where they can find you on YouTube and on Instagram.
Yeah, so I'm at YouTube / Richie Hustles. Instagram is Richie Hustles. Every social media outlet, TikTok, Facebook, at Richie Hustles.
Okay, so I'm going to follow you there too.
Me too.
And secondly, before we let you
Awesome.
go, because Greg tells me you're a sports fan. Stephanie told me you're a sports fan. How do you feel about Mac Jones?
Yeah. I do follow sports. I don't follow sports too much anymore. I just don't have the time to. So I haven't heard much, but I thought you were going to ask me about now living in Florida. Are you still a New England Patriots fan?
Okay, well, all right. So answer that one. That's fine too.
And I'm a fan, so I don't follow the New England sports as much anymore. I'm still a Boston Red Sox fan. I think I'll always be a Red Sox fan because I've always been a baseball, but I think I'm more of a Tom Brady fan. So I don't know if I have to put on a Tampa Bay hat soon, but
all right, well,
not crazy about what just happened to them,
If I make it down to that neck of the woods, and maybe Greg too, maybe we'll try to hunt you down and get out there for a round of golf or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, listen, thank you for joining us, Richie. All right, appreciate it.
No, thank you for having. I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you guys.
Thanks,
Likewise.
Richie, you too.
So our thanks to Richie Hustles. And again, you can find the Family Section podcast on the podcast page of 985thesportshub.com, as well as the Sports Hub app. You can find it on jassby.com/podcast, and that's jassby.com/podcast. And be sure to check out all the other podcasts as well at B-Pod Studios, and that's B as in boy, bpodstudios.com, also Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We'll catch you next time on the Family Section podcast.